Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 9, and this episode is about Frankie Knuckles and the roots of house. And man, must I say, I got my life with this episode because being, one of the children of being one of the children of the rainbow, I grew up listening to house, and definitely when I lived in Detroit and Boston, I went to some raves and I live for house music. House music is great. It's innovative. It brings people together, and it just lets you to just be free and dance. And this episode really just brought out the roots of house and how house started as an underground, as like an underground genre of music that started, in the disco clubs and the gay clubs, and how it pretty much crossed over into the mainstream, and how it has influenced so many, so many great artists right now in the industry. Especially like pop artists, and how Frankie Knuckles was the man who's pretty much is known as the godfather of house music. And literally what Frankie Knuckles has done is that he literally brought disco back to life. And it goes, and they talk about all of these different DJs who helped put house on the map, and also how it's also and also how house has been an influence in R&B as well as hip hop, and as well as pop, and that this is a music that even still to this day is like a great form of music. I mean, if you go to any gay club or straight clubs as well, like you go to any club, you're definitely going to hear some house, and you're going to see people cutting loose on the dance floor. And that was the whole purpose of house, is to get people dancing again. And the interesting thing about Frankie Knuckles is that he took you on a journey, when he would do his mixes and would do his cuts, and how, based off what he's done, it pretty much created a new genre of music, and how it influenced so many other DJs to take up the torch and to build on what Frankie Knuckles had established. And this really, became big after the whole death of disco happened in '79 in Chicago, where all of these disco records were bombed, during a baseball game. And it's like literally overnight, discotheques, disco stations literally went out of business. They either became country western stations or they became R&B. And disco, that art form that brought, blacks and whites together, gays and straights together, once became divided once again. And it shows how house was a revolution to bring disco back, but bring it back with a twist, with electronica and still keeping the disco beat. So, house is pretty much a combination of disco, electronica, and how it had, by combining the two, it created a new form of music and a new trend. It also opens up about Frankie Knuckles. He's from New York, and as a youth, he would hang out in gay clubs, and he would be getting in a lot of trouble, with the drug scene and doing petty crime and things like that. And he actually befriended a guy who actually was one of the guys who worked at the youth detention center. And it was funny because the guy was actually gay, and they actually saw him at a gay club, and them being young, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna tell everybody about you." And he's like, "No, we're worth something now." So what he did is that he actually introduced them to other, fellow fellow people like DJs and stuff who were actually a part of the disco scene, and they began to become DJs themselves, and begin to make a career for themselves. And he actually gets offered a job to become the DJ of this place called the Warehouse in Chicago. And he takes the job on one condition, that the same guy who did the sound for Studio 54, that this man would actually do the sound for this new club, the Warehouse. And they actually agreed. So Frankie Knuckles took the job, and what he did when he came to Chicago, he began to take those elements and that foundation of disco and build a new audience around this new music called house. And it was like very, very inspirational to see. And it was great because Frankie Knuckles' introduction and his skills behind the tables as a DJ, it began to change the landscape of the club, where at first it was more like, gays and blacks, but then he started to see that now whites were actually coming, whites who were less homophobic were now joining the crowd. And this allowed him to even be more creative, where he was combining all these different sounds and mashing them together and create this new form of music. And also, while he was in Chicago, he met Jamie Principle, who pretty much was a genius in his own right, who pretty much was very big in electronica, and he also combined this with what Frankie Knuckles had established, with his ability to mix and to create new forms of music. And they came up with this, and Principle had this song called, Jamie Principle had this song called Your Love, which he had written, as an ode to a girl that he was dating. And pretty much this song helped change the game, and it helped establish, house music as a mainstay. And they just built on that. And then from that point on, new DJs started to come into the mix. Like in '82, you had DJ Jesse Saunders, who was a DJ in Chicago, and he was actually doing a set, and he had this song called On and On, which I think was written by Jamie Principle, but I could be wrong. But he lost the track. And that was the best track he had out of all the mixes he had. So what he decided to do was that he decided to recreate it. All he had was a metronome, All he had was a metronome, and he had some synthesizers, and he pretty much recreated the song. And he even got this guy named Vince Lawrence to do the lyrics on the track. And it was a cute track, like On and On, bitch. I thought it was cute, and I've actually never heard that song before, but it was actually a cute track. And they actually released this. It was actually the first house song to be released on vinyl, and it literally sold 30,000 copies around Chicago. Now that is pandemonium. That's huge. That was like a major local hit, and this began to further establish this new form of music called house music. And forgive me for me perspiring. It's actually hot in here. But moving on. The actual, the place where they actually pressed the vinyl, they actually now became, after the success of On and On, they established a new record label called Trax Records. And it was actually headed by this man named Eddie Sherman. I'm sorry. And then, next thing you know, more DJs started to come into the fold. Like, you had, Larry Heard, who was known as Mr. Fingers. I definitely remember Mr. Fingers. And he had this track called Can You Feel It? And I actually remember that track because that track used to take me places. Like, I literally love the instrumental, and it's like a real slow groove. Like, it's not only like a good dance track, but it's also a real groove track. Like, you can just put that on and just kick back with a drink, and you can just zone out. I mean, that's how great that song is. I mean, that song, even to this day, still takes me out, because I used to hear it a lot, growing up. And definitely it's one of my favorites. And another DJ, Harry Jazzmaster Funk, he actually put the speeches of, he actually put a speech of Martin Luther King to the track, and that became big in the south side of Chicago, which is a dominantly black area, and, it really kind of like really brought back not only that we have not forgotten the struggle, but then yet this struggle is now entwined with what the revolution we're creating in music right now. So the two combinations is everything. And even now, like, you can still hear that track with Martin Luther King's speech, and it's like it has a life of its own. And that was actually that was actually very exciting to witness, because for myself, I love that song, and it's definitely a song I remember. And I can also make a confession. I'm a singer myself, and I love music. I'm a big music fan, and I like different genres of music. And to hear that track, and I remember growing up kind of harmonizing to it, it was everything. And to see how new DJs were coming in, taking house and giving it a new spin and giving it a new twist and giving it a new flavor was great, because it became like a real revolution that started in the underground clubs, which later on took even which even made a bigger explosion later on. And the great thing about it is that, in the mid-'80s, house became, a major force in Chicago, and it made stars out of DJs. I mean, it's funny because, you got, DJs even now who are in hip-hop, who are now becoming stars in their own right through hip-hop, where at first that was the case with house music, where the DJ was the star. And you would go to these clubs knowing that this DJ was going to be there, and you knew that this DJ was going to lay out some great, awesome music. And then there was this other track, which I definitely remember, called "Move Your Body," which was created by Marshall Jefferson and Curtis McLean, who were post office workers, but had this dream internationally, because they used to frequent all the clubs and was big fans of house, and they decided to create one of their own. And "Move Your Body" literally became like the anthem of house music. And even to this day, like, you can still go to like a gay club or like, any kind of club, and you can probably still hear that track being played. But it's probably even now even more updated to today's sounds. But that track is pretty much was like a foundation for the house music movement, where, and that track is everything. I mean, because I think definitely it's been sampled, and it's been used many times, and it's been, a movement in and of itself. And one of the things that house music represent was this freedom of sexuality and sensuality, this freedom just to be. This freedom just to be free, to just be, just to be yourself, and to just be loose. Whatever bad things you're going through, whatever troubles you're having, you can just come and just release it, and just dance and have a good time, and let the music take you on a journey. And that was the main thing that Frankie Knuckles lived for. And then there was this song that in '87 that Frankie Knuckles and Jamie Principle did, called "Baby Wants to Ride," which is a really, really cool track because it's really sexy. And it actually reached a bigger audience in Europe. So this is when house music began to cross the river into Europe, and it started to take a life of its own. And the thing is that house was all about love, but then you had this kind of thing that happens in hip-hop where DJs started beefing because DJs were kind of borrowing and sampling, because house music is all about borrowing and sampling. It's all about, combining the old with the new, and, infusing it and creating a new sound and a new form of music. And you had other DJs who were kind of sampling from other DJs, and some of the DJs were beefing, kind of like what they do in hip hop with beefing. So it's like it goes to show you that that's this whole like medium of beef, actually started with house, and it was kind of funny to know that. But and then we also had this other DJ, Steve Silk Curry. He was a teenager when he first started out, and he had very strict parents, so they would have to sneak him in and then sneak him out, so he won't get in trouble. But he actually did this track called Jack Your Body, and Jack Your Body became #1 on the British singles charts. So the fact that now that this music was now crossing over into Europe and crossing over into London and Great Britain, it took a life on its own, and it began to get bigger and bigger over the years. And also Frankie Knuckles ended up moving to London, and he lived there for 4 months, and began to even further build this movement over there in London. And also, we also have like one of the standard problems with the record industry. Track Records was actually promoting the records over there overseas, and didn't get consent with the artist because the artist had shady contracts, so the artist didn't have any power or say-so of their own material. So Trax was actually making an obscene amount of money, but the artists weren't being paid. So I think after a while that changed, but then again, it was a lesson learned that because they were young kids and they were just coming straight out of the clubs, they didn't really know the business, and they got taken advantage of, unfortunately. And then the greatest thing about this is that house music began to influence hip-hop. Like, they had this song called I'll House You, which was actually done by the Jungle Brothers, which was a hip-hop group. And we definitely know the Jungle Brothers because the Jungle Brothers was definitely one of the pioneer groups of hip-hop, along like with Grandmaster Flash, Notorious 5, and a few others. So the Jungle Brothers began to, introduce house music. And then one of my favorite tracks that I grew up with as a kid, Crystal Waters' Gypsy Woman, was an ode to house, and that really helped bring house to the mainstream, because that song, Gypsy Woman, y'all remember that? Oh, that's my shit. I still love that track to this day. It reached #5 on the U.S. charts and went #1 in 5 European countries. That is amazing. And the funny thing about it is no wonder why one of my favorite songs from Mary Mary is Walking, because Walking actually samples Gypsy Woman. And you kind of hear that beat, and that beat is something that you ride on, Dun, 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 dun. Like, ooh, it's just like, it's great, because you really see how house has now taken on a form where now it's, even mainstream artists are even being influenced by it. And also in the 90s, Frankie Knuckles did like this amazing album called Beyond the Mix, and you also had this song called The Whistle Song, which was a very big track, and it went #1 on the dance charts. And actually, that song I think was also sampled in Noah's Ark, Jumping the Broom. Like, they had this scene when they were like, dancing, Noah Chance and Brandon. And the song, I think the song they were dancing to, it was like, work, hold on, do, 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 do. And I think it was sampling the Whistle song. So that was pretty big because it's like this song still lives to this day, and it's a beautiful track, you know. And I definitely remember the Whistle song because I remember seeing it. There used to be this show called, I think it was called Moving Vibrations. They used to come on BET, and they would play a lot of house tracks and a lot of house music. So house definitely had a home on BET as well in the early days of like Video Soul. So that was really cool to see that. But then, like, you know, sadly, house music started to take like a back seat to like the whole rap genre of music, because the DJ was pretty much behind the booth where the rappers were right there in your face. So house began to kind of take a back seat to, you know, kind of took a back seat to like, you know, to like the whole mainstream side of things, because, you know, in the 90s, the mainstream was rap. You know, you had NWA, you had, you know, Ice-T and all of these different, you know, artists that were really just out there. And pretty much at one point where people were like jumping the house, now they were now jumping, you know, to hip hop music. So house kind of took a back seat, but house never died. It kept going, and it became big in the raves. And I definitely went to this massive, you know, rave in Detroit when I lived there. because I lived in Detroit for about a year, and while living in Detroit, there was like this massive, there was like this rave I went to, and man, they had like nearly 5 different DJs, and each DJ took a turn doing their own track of house music, and the place was jumping, and it was great. It's an experience I will never forget. Let's see, and then also we actually see that you know, Steve Silk Curry, you know, he actually was one of the musicians that worked on Remember the Time, you know, for Michael Jackson, and he worked along with Teddy Riley, so I thought that was pretty cool. And he ended up working with a lot of artists like Madonna, you know, a lot of big names. So he started to really make some serious bank in the music industry. And in 1998, Frankie Knuckles was awarded a Grammy for Mixer of the Year, which was very big for the house revolution and for the house music, because he was the godfather of house, and to him to be recognized by the National Academy of Music Arts and Sciences was very big. And the funny thing about it is that in 2004, then Senator Barack Obama actually presented a street, you know, in honor of Frankie Knuckles, called Frankie Knuckles Way, and he held like this really big, this really big ceremony for him, and he was like really emotional, was very moved on how many people loved him and how many people supported him, and how Chicago is forever grateful for Frankie Knuckles and for him being the revolution that created house music. And also in 2015, they did like this big concert in Jackson Park, which celebrated the 25th anniversary of house being introduced. And then, you know, Senator Obama was then now the new elected President Obama, and he even sent a message, giving his congratulations to house and how much him and Michelle love house music. So them being, you know, from Chicago, they definitely know about house music. So that was cool to know that President Obama loved house music. So that was big, you know, that they definitely love the club scene, and they definitely love, you know, house music, and how they, you know, pay homage to it. That was pretty cool. Sadly, in 2015, Frankie Knuckles passed away from complication of diabetes, but his legend still lives on, and he's never forgotten, and he had a beautiful spirit, and he was the kind of person that was very soft-spoken, but his music spoke for him. And one thing that he said is that when you have great people around you, you know, you have your family, you have your loved ones, you have your friends, and these people are around you, they keep you grounded, they keep you humble, they keep you passionate, and they keep you living, because you know, it's not just about the accolades. It's not just about the money. It's about actually enjoying the people around you. And I thought that was very inspirational by Frankie Knuckles. So Frankie Knuckles, rest in peace, my brother. And you know, they're also saying that we need to keep this movement of house music going, because we need to kind of bring back fun, you know, to music instead of violence, and and also, you know, fun instead of hate. So I thought that was very great, and I can also say, you know, house still lives on with me, and it lives on with many others, and house music is a music that will never die, and house is just growing and growing, and it will continue to grow. So that's my review for tonight's episode of Unsung. Subscribe to my channel. Leave comments down below. I am so sorry that I am sweating. Like, it is really hot in here, and I don't know why. But yeah, but I'm about to fix this though. But definitely subscribe to my channel. Leave comments down below. Like this video, share this video, and I will definitely be back with another episode of Unsung for you guys next week. So until then, again, thank you guys for your support. Thank you for continuing to follow me, and I will be back with another episode of Unsung next week. So until then, take care.